and welcome to the Man Enough Podcast. I am Justin Baldoni.
I'm Liz Plank.
And I'm Jamie Heath.
How you doing, Jamie?
This is our third take at this because I keep screwing up. So.
We are coming to you from our brand new set.
Ooh, I love it.
It's the same set, different.
It's the same set, but different. We have an awesome show today. We have a really wonderful man coming on.
What's his name?
Anthony Padilla, who is one of the most successful YouTubers ever. He's a wide open book with his story. And I think it's going to help a lot of people.
I'm looking forward to talking to him.
He is very honest about his mental health struggles.
Which is really refreshing.
Yeah.
And rare for men, especially successful men. Anthony was one of the original YouTubers. At one point, his company had like 22 million subscribers.
Wild.
So this guy has reached the top of that game. And he's wide open book. And I found that really refreshing. And I think if you are somebody who's listening to this who has had any sort of battle with mental health or knows maybe a man in your life that is dealing with it and isn't able to talk to somebody, this is a great podcast to listen to. It's just, it's a really sweet share, very vulnerable. Yeah. Are you ready, Jamie Heath?
I'm ready.
Yeah, your teeth look good.
Got my teeth whitened.
Yeah, they look good.
That's right.
Just for the listeners.
Just for the listeners. God, I love Liz Plank so much. We will be right back with Anthony Padilla. This is Man Enough. Hello, and welcome to the Man Enough Podcast. I'm Justin Baldoni.
I'm Liz Plank.
I'm Jamie Heath.
And we are joined by a very handsome, cool man with amazing hair and
An amazing set. Look at his set.
Anthony Padilla.
What's up, Anthony?
Hello. Yo, how you guys doing?
We're so good. It's so good to
Thank you for having me on.
see you and meet you virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the new world. This is the new normal.
This is the new normal. Liz, could you
Yeah.
tell our amazing audience a little bit about Anthony?
Yes. So Anthony is a comedian, a content creator, the host and founder of Pressalike Productions. He's from Sacramento, California, and he's best known for his satirical comedy and in-depth interviews. He goes really, really deep, and we're going to go deep today with him too. So he's considered one of the internet's earliest success stories as a co-founding member of SMOSH Media Company in 2005. And during your decade-long tenure, you've really created a comedy empire. You've garnered more than 25 million subscribers. You've created 10 short-form scripted shows. You've released 2 feature films in partnership with Lionsgate and YouTube Red. Your current viral series, I Spent a Day With, features interviews with members of marginalized groups and prominent public figures and has generated hundreds of millions of views. What
That
have
is a
you
lot of
done
shit.
Not hundreds of
recently?
thousands.
Wow.
Hundreds of millions.
How many followers?
Yeah.
Instagram, how
Almost 2.8 or something. I don't remember.
3.2.
So like a full
3.8.
country.
I don't know, something like
How
that.
close do you think I am follower-wise to you?
I think you're probably just shy by like 1%. I think
Just
I got
shy.
just an edge on you.
I have about 1% of what you have.
Hey, you know, you
Actually,
gotta- you gotta
no,
start
you
one
have,
somewhere.
yeah. Wait,
What would
I've
one-
got 2,000.
Oh, so it's not even 1% at all.
yeah.
Well, there you go.
Enough about that. How you doing, man? How are you?
I am good. I'd say I was a little bit better when I thought that COVID was done.
And thank you for, I do love, speaking of COVID, that you, even though you live here in LA, you want to do this from home. And we really appreciate that, man. We really do. So I want to start with a question we ask everybody. When was the last time that you didn't feel enough?
Like 3 days ago. I mean, I feel like that's probably the most common feeling that I feel.
Wow. More than others? Like happiness and joy and excitement?
I mean, probably more than hunger, yeah.
Wow.
Do you mind sharing with us? You said that just a few days ago you didn't feel enough. Do you mind sharing a little bit about why?
Sure, yeah. I think it was related to COVID, actually. I started doing in-person interviews again for my show, and I had been going through so much depression, anxiety, and stress throughout all of COVID that when I started being able to do things in person again, I felt invigorated again, especially because I've struggled with social anxiety, and then doing my show, interviewing people, having people in person has kind of helped me fight through that anxiety and just like find a reason to talk to people and connect with people. And someone close to me is kind of like high risk for certain elements related to COVID. So I felt like, like I was putting their life in danger if I weren't to completely, when the Delta variant came back, to switch things up, go back to being completely masked around everyone on set, and then, doing all my interviews digitally. And I was really fighting this internal battle of wanting to feel like I could be alive again, while also understanding that in order to do that, I was putting someone very close to me at risk. So it was just this long internal struggle there.
You wanted to make sure this person was okay. It felt like you were not enough, like you were failing maybe.
Yes, failing them, feeling like I love my work more than their well-being.
Yeah.
I feel this kind of overwhelming pressure to always kind of have things like under control for everyone around me. I think a big part of it is the environment that I grew up in. My parents separated when I was really young. My mom has agoraphobia. And if you don't know what that is, it's kind of a fear of being in an environment where you don't have control. So she feels most safe at home, where she has everything under control. I kind of felt like it was, or maybe I convinced myself, I don't know, there's something there that made me feel like I needed to help make sure that she knew that everything was okay. And I don't know if it's because of that or what, but I felt those same feelings all my life. So whenever someone in my life seems like they could use my help, I feel like I am not doing enough if I'm not there to help and support them.
Wow.
And I'd say I feel that feeling like multiple times a week, just because, I don't know, maybe it's me feeling like I just need to always be helping.
Yeah, I think so much of masculinity, or like the ideal of masculinity, is being in control, and somehow like thinking we have like the illusion of control, I think, is the thing that we've learned in this whole 18 months, like or so, that we actually aren't in control. So like, what is that intersection for you? When you don't feel in control, do you feel like you're less of a man?
Yeah, I don't know if it has to do, I mean, maybe it, well, let me back up. I think it clearly does have to do with gender norms. I don't feel like I'm thinking about those things consciously, but I think that these are things that have been implanted in me, since birth, that the man of the house should be the one in control to make sure everything is okay at home. And I do wonder sometimes, like, if I didn't have those societal pressures put on me, would I feel the need to constantly be in control and have everything figured out? I don't know.
I love talking to you. I mean, in the first 5 minutes, we talked about agoraphobia and anxiety, depression. I mean, we're getting into it, man. We're just getting started.
Yeah. I just come out the gate.
I love it.
I love it. I have when you talk about your mom, I'm curious how that has affected you as it pertains to being a provider for others. You did talk about wanting to take care. So my mother is bipolar, who struggles with anxiety. That's one of the things that she experiences, and paranoia and things of that nature. And it's been a tough battle for her, most importantly, but then for me and my sister and our experience. And me, I'm just about maybe 5 years ago, really started learning how much it affected me and my relationship with others and my relationship with women. Because I always had to provide for my mother, take care of her, or shield her, or shield others. And that's had a big effect on me, and I've seen how it's benefited me in some ways and also has hurt me. So it's interesting to hear you talk about that. Do you feel like it's Do you feel like, just as a man and how you walk through the world, that maybe you've learned some things, because of that?
Yeah, for sure. And, going back to what you were saying about realizing how much it affected you, I feel like, for me, I feel guilty when I think about how the struggles that people I love have, affects me. It's like, it's not about me right now. And making it about me, makes me feel guilty for feeling that feeling. And I am starting to come to terms with, okay, the people around me that I love can be going through something and having struggles, and I can care about them, but I can also acknowledge the fact that it does affect me as well, and that's tough. Yeah. And sorry, you had a setup there, and I totally didn't.
Not really. I just was really relating to what you said, and wanted to share that that I relate to that, but also just that how I walk as a man, and my experience and how I treat women. My life has a lot to do with my relationship with my mother.
Yeah. I do think that all the relationships that I've had with women, I've felt like it was my responsibility to make sure that they were okay. And in many cases, I put their needs before mine. And I'm not sure, I haven't really thought about how much gender has played into that, but I do feel like in most cases that it's my responsibility to make sure that the women in my life feel nurtured, especially because I've learned that most women don't feel nurtured by men. So I feel like if I can kind of break that mold, then I'm doing something that might be helpful for them.
Yeah. I relate to a lot of what you're saying, and I've had similar patterns in my life in relationships. And I know you've talked about specifically at least one very unhealthy relationship that you were in. We can call it toxic. And my first girlfriend, I was 18. I was in a very toxic relationship myself, and I read about it in the book. And even I'm even coming to realize that there was I don't know, what's even the word for it? There were sexual boundaries that were crossed, assault, if you will, that I'm learning to accept happened to me. But part of that came from my eagerness to just please and want to just make her the queen, which stems back, I think, to childhood. And I know you talk openly about one of those types of relationships, and we rarely hear men talk about these types of things. But it happens. So are you comfortable sharing the experience that you had?
Yeah. This is a relationship 10, 12 years ago. It started off great. Everything felt like it was very mutual. And then I do think that I was almost too eager to give all of myself in a way. And I think that the other person in this relationship started to get very comfortable with me giving all of myself, and then maybe expecting that. And one thing that she would go back to is like, oh, that's not a thing that men do. Like, men don't, dance like that, make that facial expression, there were lots of
Pleasing you.
Yeah. And there was there's so much of this idea that I wasn't being man enough. Throw in the tagline there. There was a lot of that. I remember I jumped out of fear when I was walking downtown, and there was some cockroaches that ran out under my feet, and she was like, oh my God, that is such a girly thing to do. Why would you? And I would just beat myself up, I need to be more manly. I need to be more this or that, assertive, or whatever. Yeah. All these things were that I thought equated to being this man that she wanted from me. And I always felt like I needed to craft my life around what she saw the ideal version of me to be. And I think that's kind of when it became very toxic. And, it sucks to realize that I did have a part in that, because I gave into that in many ways. And I battle between feeling like, oh, I shouldn't blame myself for being taken advantage of, or all these other elements to it. But then also feeling like, yeah, you know what? I did have some responsibility in that. And maybe that's a good thing, because then I can take that going forward, knowing that I have some control in making sure that that kind of situation doesn't play out again for me.
Curious what comes up for you, Liz, when you hear that, because so often it's the men telling a woman how to behave and how to be and policing and be a lady and all of the things that women have been hearing forever. But as we know, there's also female misogyny. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, we all have internalized these messages and we've all been raised in that society. And I hear about it all the time. And I had to unlearn these things and I'm still unlearning them as a woman, even though I know, for example, if like we split the bill or if I'm on a date and like, the guy didn't like make sure that I get into my car, like little things like that. I'm like, there's that first thing pops up and I'm like, is that me? Or is that like the propaganda? Like, is that like the programming? And so how do you deprogram yourself? Like, I it feels like you already are very aware of these dynamics. But yeah, how did you come to be able to understand, okay, well, this is her stuff. And like her expectations are not something that I want to, carry.
I think so much of it had to deal with confidence. I was at a very low point. And I feel like because I didn't have confidence, I looked at her for, like when she felt good about me, I felt confident. And I think having more of my own internal strengths, my own confidence, I think building that has helped me realize that other people's shit doesn't need to depict how I feel. Right. And I do want to point out that maybe the reason that I allowed myself to get to that point in that relationship so quickly, I would say, is because I had came out of a previous relationship where I feel like I was in many ways doing the opposite. I was making the woman I was with feel like she wasn't doing things, feminine enough and that kind of thing. And I think that I beat myself up and I felt guilty about making someone feel like they weren't enough because they weren't doing things that I felt like they needed to. So when the other side of that presented itself, I feel like I kind of allowed myself, almost like I felt like I deserved it. So a big part of it now has been feeling like I don't deserve to feel bad. I don't deserve to hate myself.
I'm just really digging how honest you are and how open you are. And I think it also reflects in your work. I'd love to pivot and talk a bit about your work. Oh, yeah. You've had a ton of success, man. You're like one of the OG YouTubers. Like you've been doing this just as long or longer than anybody. And you've had the extreme highs, and I think you've had some of the lows. And I'm wondering how that's affected the way you've moved through the world as a man. Because we're taught to seek that external validation, right? That success, that carrot that is just being dangled throughout the course of our lives and eventually falls into the grave, and then we fall too. And I'm just curious what that was like for you to have such extreme success and then have it in some ways taken away, because I know what happened to you was a bit of a bummer. If you want to go into that too, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. So I feel like I had this really unhealthy relationship with success. A big part of it was that I learned that the harder I worked, the more successful I was. And there was this upward trajectory for like 10 years. I made a successful business when I was pretty young. I was 17 when I first started making videos on YouTube. And after 7 years or so, we sold our company. And I started to see myself as intrinsically connected to my success. And I feel like a big part of that came from growing up. We were very financially insecure. So I needed to have success to feel that sense of security. I started to feel a little bit insecure about my ability to maintain this thing. And when we sold that company, I felt like everything was, maybe I had some control taken away from me in a good way. I didn't have to feel like all that weight was on my shoulders. I can rely on a company to take care of that for us. And it took many years for me to realize it, but I started to realize, this company is not mine anymore. It looks like something that isn't part of me anymore. And I started realizing that I needed to exit from that because it was I no longer felt any pleasure in doing almost any of it. So that was a very, very difficult decision. You know, I had to take this risk. Losing it all would be better than the feeling that I was feeling at the moment.
Wow.
And as ready as I thought I was not ready for that. And so when I started doing my own things, everyone saw me kind of floundering around trying to figure out what it was that was me. And I felt like, okay, I need to do comedy still because that's what I'm known for. But yet that didn't feel like it was like the best version of me. It was almost like a wall that I was kind of hiding behind in many ways. And it took well over a year of me just seeing like my numbers drop and all these things and like getting so insecure about like, what do people think of me now? Do people see me as this like failure now, that I was this kind of one-hit wonder who grew with the success of this brand, and then without the brand, I'm nothing. And then I kind of had that harsh realization that the harder I work doesn't necessarily always mean that I'm going to continue rising. And that was a really, really hard pill to swallow. And I started to feel like it was me. It means that I'm not working hard enough. I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, it always comes back to
And
us.
yeah. And I do think, you know, part of that probably is somewhere in there connected to me feeling like I'm not being man enough, not being as successful as I should be. You know, and then all these fears in my head were like, oh, I'm not going to be able to provide. I'm not going to be able to be this image of what I saw myself as. And that's when I started going to therapy. That really did help me kind of understand
so you didn't go to
why.
therapy before that.
No, I had no therapy before that. And it wasn't even necessarily that I had judgment against it, but I was like, oh, I don't need it. Plus, I was working so much. Like, where's the time for therapy?
Yeah, we always justify that.
And then I started to understand why I felt those feelings, started to have sympathy for my younger self and all the ways that those feelings were kind of implanted in me as I was growing up. And in understanding and having sympathy for my younger self, I was able to have sympathy for the current me. And it was really only when I started confidently making things and not necessarily caring about the success or the numbers or what people thought of me that I actually found what it is that is me, that I can create and feel like is an extension of me in many ways.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about YouTube. I mean, you're one of the earliest YouTubers ever, right? You've been on the platform for so long, and I think so often when we hear about YouTube and men and masculinity, it's like we have a lot of data showing us that the algorithm is sort of like radicalizing men, and people, but generally, what we're seeing with all kinds of content that's not just misogyny is sort of the gateway, and then it leads to white supremacy and all these dangerous hate groups. You have a very different brand, right? Of just content that you put out on YouTube. You're very positive and productive. So I'm curious how you see YouTube, the relationship between YouTube and how it can be, a source of light and progress for men instead of driving them into, I think, dangerous corners of the internet.
Yeah, and it didn't always start like that. When I first started even doing the series that I'm doing now, that is all the things that you just mentioned, it started off as like satirical, and I was interviewing people in a way that was almost poking fun at like people with strange beliefs. I started off interviewing flat earthers, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna dunk on them a little bit. There was kind of that toxicity to it where, I watched that and it's not like I felt good watching it. It was like entertaining, it was funny, but it didn't leave me with a good feeling. And I watched more things on YouTube, and I kind of saw what was popular at the time, and it was a lot of content like that. I could have kept taking jabs at people, and it just kind of made me feel a little bit gross to contribute to that feeling that I felt watching that content, and afterwards like having this very negative mindset. And it was that, and then in combination with I I sat down and interviewed furries, and a little bit of the idea, it wasn't hostile or anything, but a little bit of the idea was like, these people are strange. Why?
What
Why
are
do they believe
Furies
these
for
things?
those of us who don't know what that is?
Furries. They are people who either draw or wear fursuits, and they call them fursonas. They get to create entirely new personas with these kind of anthropomorphic animal creatures. They are usually furry creatures. That's where they get the name. And in doing that interview, I saw and I felt how much respect these people had for me. And I also started to understand where they were coming from. There was so much of this feeling of them not feeling comfortable in their own skin. And they wanted to have a new front-facing persona that wasn't necessarily them in the flesh. And they got so vulnerable with me, and they thanked me, and it just felt so natural to kind of have empathy and really come from a point of curiosity.
You felt empathy for these people that you thought you were going to dunk on and make fun of.
Yeah, and you know what? And I do want to point out, I didn't go in there thinking I was going to dunk on them. I moved away from that a little bit, but it was a little bit of like, what's going to happen? I don't know. And that was a really big turning point for me when I realized that there is something so deeply relatable with everyone, really everyone. If you just dig a little deeper, ask some questions, understand why they are the way they are, you can relate to why they do the things that they do that make them feel a sense of comfort and maybe a little sense of control in this insanely chaotic world. And I just felt so much potential to have people potentially learn through watching my content, watching me learn that there would be so much less prejudice if we were to just break down the walls, ask some questions, and understand where people are coming from.
Sit at the table. I want to focus on the decision you made, because that's a big deal, Anthony, is to be able to have the success you have and to know how the internet works. I mean, look, if you just think about a YouTube video or a TikTok that works or something, and you get millions of likes, the part of your brain, that Pavlovian part of all of us, then just kind of like goes off, and you're like, oh, I have to make more of that. I have to please these people, right? I have to keep, I have to feed the beast, if you will, and you keep making the same stuff. And then what you did was you got yourself in a situation, and you went, this doesn't feel good. And I want to acknowledge you for that, because as men, especially, and I believe this is how the patriarchy works, is we're taught at an early age to thrive off of making somebody feel less than us. That's how we get ahead.
It makes us
life.
feel better. Yes, exactly.
Because all of us are hurting, right? And this dominance structure of the patriarchy makes us all feel a little bit better about ourselves when someone else feels less than.
Yeah.
And what you did is you're like, you know what? I have this platform. I have this power. I feel shitty about myself making these people feel bad. And you did something different. You took a risk. You took a risk in your business, knowing that it was not what would be popular on your YouTube channel. And you're like, no, I want to go actually investigate. And these people are just like me. They're hurting. I mean, you were hurting, and you found empathy and compassion, which are generally feminine qualities, right? Not masculine qualities. And I just want to acknowledge you for that, because that was a big risk, and yet you followed your heart. And so much of what the journey of masculinity is, and why we're doing this show, is to try to help people recognize that we have to be in touch with both sides, the masculine and the feminine, because it is the feminine that gives us life, literally. Empathy, compassion, sensitivity, all of these things that we're taught at such a young age to reject as men. These are the things that make us human. And you did that. And now you have a thriving, you're thriving again, and you're killing it. And I love what you're doing right now. I love that you're going and you're sitting down with people that other people would write off, and you're getting to know why. Why are you doing these things? You're asking these questions, and you're going deeper. So kudos to you, man. I know
Thanks,
that's a big moment. And I hope other men, if you're listening to this, be willing to walk away from it like Anthony did. Because if it doesn't serve
that.
you, why are you doing it?
Right, yeah, and I really do and did feel better just feeling like I was being more genuine to myself. I really do feel like deep down, I do have this curiosity about people. I do really want to understand. And everyone has something that I can take a little piece from in understanding myself better. And that felt fulfilling.
I got a question for you. Your spirit, well, before I ask the question, you have a very a very gentle spirit.
Thank you.
Obviously, you're in comedy, and we've been talking about what we have, but the way that you just speak and your composure, and just like I said, your spirit is very gentle.
I appreciate that.
You said that you have been in therapy.
Yes.
I'm curious, what have you learned? What has made you better as you walk this earth?
That my success isn't intrinsically connected to my value. That it's okay to feel bad feelings and I don't have to judge myself for them. That a lot of the negative feelings that I feel now are intrinsically connected to something that was implanted in me either in my childhood or society. Who I am when I feel best is a version of me that isn't necessarily being impacted by all of these external factors. That I shouldn't run away from my traumas. I should look at them square in the eyes, acknowledge them, understand them, and know that it's okay to have these things affect me, these traumas there, but that I can, once I fully acknowledge them, I can kind of live harmoniously with them.
Love that. And let me ask you, what do you think well, let me ask you two questions with this. First one is, what do you think you do that contributes to the elevation of women?
I hope that the women in my life feel like when they interact with me that I am not seeing them as something other, just something, I feel like when I was growing up, I did see women as women, and like it was through this lens of that's a woman, that's someone that isn't a man, that's something, and all these different things, and I'm not sure what it was, and maybe I was taught these things, but as I've grown, I've tried to, and I feel like successfully, I don't even have to think about it anymore, just almost like people are people, but yet I do acknowledge that women do have these other pressures put on them, especially by people like me. And I feel like I can't, that's one thing I do. Like when I do talk to a woman, I do have that thing in the back of my head that tells me like, it's likely that people like you have hurt them in ways or not been compassionate with them or not have empathy for them or judge them, that there is a little bit of that. And it's not even this feeling like I need to make up for all men's problems and whatever. Like, it's not that I feel like I need to come in here and save the day, but I do hope that when I talk to women, they see that I am not like filtering all of my thoughts through the idea that they're a woman.
Can I plus one your question with what is something that you're trying to improve when it comes to your relationship with women? Something that you're like, oh, this is something I need to work on more.
I think it's the feeling that I should be there to help and support a woman maybe more than men, because maybe there is that idea in my head that has been implanted that men can just figure it out, but women need help. Maybe there is a little bit of that because of my relationship with my mom when I was younger. So I am trying to work on feeling like I don't need to be a savior or help someone just because of their gender.
Can I ask you another question? By the way, you can always plus one me on
Okay,
time.
great.
You always plus one.
It was a great question.
You have a voice when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Why?
because it's very frustrating that some people are in many ways perceived to be, societally, structurally less than by others. And I feel like it kind of plays into kind of the idea that I have with all of my interviews even. It's that everyone has a struggle and everyone has something about them that's so relatable if we were to just understand them more. And I feel like, the fact that we perceive people based on the color of their skin, it's kind of a tough spot, because should you acknowledge when someone has systemically felt struggles that you might not be able to relate to? Yes, you should be able to acknowledge that. But everyone is dealing with something, and we all deserve the same amount of respect.
I thank you for it. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've talked about, and I really relate to this. You've talked about growing up and having your sexuality questioned a lot, which I think for a lot of straight men can be debilitating. When we're growing up, we're called a girl, and that's an insult. We're called gay, and that's an insult. So what do? We grow up without even realizing it, having a distrust and a dislike of women and folks who identify as gay. So so you're somebody your whole life, you've kind of been called gay, and I think girlfriends have even called you gay. So you're in these heterosexual relationships, and the girls are saying, like, "Are you sure you're not gay?"
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. You seem like you have spent a lot of your life wanting and seeking approval, and wanting people to like you, and wanting people to download your content and like your content and subscribe to you.
Oh yeah.
And how does that translate into just your interpersonal relationships, where you identify as a straight guy, you are a straight guy, and yet like you're being kind of questioned and quote unquote put down in these homophobic ways?
Yeah, growing up, I definitely heard all those insults. I didn't even necessarily know what the word gay meant, but because I was called gay at such a young age, I felt like that's something I shouldn't be. I don't know what it is, but I shouldn't be it, because people apparently hate this thing.
Yeah.
And I did go through portions of my life kind of having this consistent third-party perspective of myself to say, would this be considered gay? If I cross my leg like this, is this gay?
Did you ever have the nail one where they asked you to look at your nails?
Yes.
Did you have that one too?
Yes,
I feel like we had very similar childhoods.
Wait,
You know
say
about
what
this?
the trick is.
Okay, so I read about it in the book. So the boys, Jamie's looking at me like, no, you're too old.
I don't know about this.
So they'd ask. So the other boys would ask, and sometimes even girls. They'd say, like,
It was
hey,
a girl in my life that asked.
it was a girl, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at your fingernails.
Yeah.
Right? And if you brought your fingernails towards you, okay, then you were a guy. And if you looked at him like this, like with your, I'm making a gesture with like my hand out. If you looked at him with your fingers spread out, then you were a girl or gay.
That is.
And to this day, even when I clip my fingernails, there's a part of my brain that has to override how I clip my fingernails, right? Because evidently it's the manly thing to do. Now, what's bizarre is how this started, nobody knows. But I've talked to guys our age where this has happened in the East Coast, in the West Coast, in the Midwest. And who knows where it even started?
You know the trick for girls though, where to know if they'll say, "Look at your shoe." Have you heard of this one? Maybe it's
No.
just a French Canadian
What is
thing.
it?
But it's like a guy or usually a boy will come up to you and be like, "Look at your shoe." And if you look at your shoe face first, like if I'm like looking from the front and like looking under my foot, therefore like kind of like spreading my legs a little bit in that way, that's not ladylike. And if I look at it from the back where I lift my foot like towards where my butt is, and then I look at the back, then that's ladylike.
So you
And
have
That
your
looks
own
so
version.
so it's
uncomfortable.
like, right?
comes
It's
up with-
this
It's also
gender
like
policing.
it kind of hurts your neck too.
I
It's
know.
like
Who does that? It's so inefficient.
so you had the nail thing. So you had all these things. Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember when this girl I was really close to, it was in middle school, and she asked me that. I was like, okay, this is a test. I know it's a test. I don't know what the test is. I think it has to do with sexuality. Okay. And I was like, this, because I thought that was like the straight way to do it. And she was like, you're gay. And I was like, what? She was like, that's the gay way to do it. You're gay. And I was like,
Am
I? No. And then like, it was that whole thing. And yeah, it's funny how that kind of thing is pushed on us so much to the point where I second guessed every single thing that I did. Like, God, I remember like, there was like a photo of me and I was like taking a drink of something. There was a photo of me, my hand was out a little bit, like with a limp wrist. And I was like, oh shit, people are gonna think that's gay. And like, it's so ridiculous that these little tiny like micro adjustments to the ways that we hold our body is even attached to societal pressures or gender norms.
And what's interesting too is even the fact that we would say, oh shit, someone's gonna think I'm gay, as if there's something wrong with that.
Right. Yeah.
Like whatever they think.
Well, they didn't even know. He didn't even know what
Yeah.
it was then, and that's the thing. And nobody even knew what. And yet it was still that big of an issue. And then, but growing up now, then women, your girlfriends have told you. So what have asked you, like genuinely, right? Not as a joke, but they've genuinely been curious and asked you if you were gay. What is that like, and why would they ask that?
And it was never to do with anything sexual. It was like you did a dance that was kind of feminine. You you screamed when you saw a cockroach or whatever. It was all these little things of like them feeling like I wasn't tough enough, or
So you were a good dancer. So you should have been a bad dancer.
honestly, I think it was that I was just a silly dancer because I was like, I don't care what people think of me. Like I didn't have flow or whatever. Like there was nothing sexy about the way I was dancing. So I think she was almost repulsed by it and was like, that's and also things like I cared about the way I looked in terms of hygiene and cleanliness and things like that.
So it's like this,
Really unattractive things for a woman.
But I was gonna say, we've talked about that with Shawn Mendes, right?
Yeah,
it's like, who made up these rules? Not a straight woman, because
Definitely not a straight woman.
like
It was other men, I bet you. I bet you it was other men that made up some rules like that.
100%. 100%. And again, women have internalized them and adopted them and reinforced them too. But like none of this really makes sense because someone who has gray hair, great like posture, smells good, like that. Those all seem like things that it would be great for men to. That's really like investing in yourself and
a net positive.
loving yourself. Yeah, and I feel like it would make a lot of our relationships better if men weren't shunned for caring about themselves, but actually celebrated for it.
Yeah, and there was this moment I had where eventually I felt comfortable in being who I felt authentically to be, regardless of if someone saw me as gay or whatever. I stopped caring how I looked when I crossed my legs. I stopped caring how I looked when I looked at my nails. And I think a big help to that was that my dad dealt with similar things. He would tell me all the time that the guys at his work would tease him and call him gay or call him metrosexual, which is kind of a hilarious term if you think about it, because that had nothing to do with sexuality, but yet people used it like
and it was an insult. It was I've been called that.
It was an insult, yeah. So despite being comfortable with a lot of these things, eventually there was part of me that internalized a lot of that, and I think that I didn't even realize that I was still internalizing it. Between the way that I laughed, the way that I held my body, the way that I slap someone on the arm when I'm laughing with them, or the way that I give hugs, or any of that. And there was this one day that I was hanging out with my dad, and he was doing all these things that I love about him. I love the way that he's not afraid to laugh in a certain way or to look silly doing this thing. And I realized that so many of the things that I've internalized to almost hate about myself, or at least be self-conscious about, were the things that I loved most about the things that my dad did. And it was kind of at that moment that I realized, oh wait, all these things that I judged myself about are the exact things that I, as a third-party perspective in this situation, am so endeared, so connected to.
Like what? Can you name some stuff?
Yeah, I mean, just like laughing really hard and like not caring what he's doing with his arms, talking with his hands, standing with like leaning on one leg or the other, just such silly little things that I have been adjusting on a micro level to make sure that I felt like I was more, whatever the I guess masculine, were the things that I loved about my dad.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I never even noticed that he did all those things that I felt self-conscious about, that I actually did like about him.
What I see, so you identify as a man, and you're a man that I see that is wearing a shirt that oftentimes men that think they have to be macho and all this stuff wouldn't wear a shirt like that. Men wouldn't necessarily have a plant in their picture. Men wouldn't have a photo of themselves or
plants are gay.
Or jewelry or whatever it is, or at least
women
not,
hate men who have plants.
at least not
hate that.
masculine.
Good Lord.
So what I see is you redefining in your very existence that you are in fact a man who also likes plants, who wears jewelry, who has a shirt that looks great. That you're just living it. So you're showing people like my son, who's 18, and giving other boys permission to still see themselves and identify with being a man and not be conflicted and confused because they also are connected to feminine qualities or whatever someone said is feminine things. So that's what I see in you. I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, thank you.
But I'm curious, Anthony, you were talking about your dad. I know that you're very open about the fact that your parents separated when you were young, and that your mother's boyfriend just dipped one day, right? That he said he was going to go to work and just never came back. I'm curious how that shaped your understanding of, relationships between men and their fathers, and how it'll shape you as a father if you do choose to go down that path.
I'm not sure how much it relates to gender, but I feel like that made me realize that there is nothing worse than almost deceiving someone, making them feel a sense of security when it's not there. And it's made me realize that the best I can do, the most true to myself I can be, is to be true to everyone around me, regardless of, what my relationship is with them. And I just hope that if I ever find myself in that kind of a situation, I will be in a place where I can just straight up be honest, instead of, I feel like we make our lives so much more difficult with all the things that are left unspoken. And if we were to face those feelings straight in the face and be confident in expressing them to those around us, we would all be in such better shape.
Speaking of feeling, there's two questions I want to dive into before we get into our rapid fire questions, because we're running out of time. I think we could talk to you for hours, Anthony.
I'm like, cool. Are we like 5 minutes in right now?
Yeah. You've been really open about, and as you started this whole thing off, you've been open about depression and anxiety, and you suffer from panic attacks. And one of the things I noticed, especially when the pandemic hit, was how many people were suffering in silence. Now, you rarely hear men talking about mental health issues. You rarely hear men talking about anxiety or depression, because it is a sign of weakness. And the last thing we should be as men are weak. And of course, because we don't know how to truly trust other men, we can't confide in other men about our social anxieties or depression or anxieties and panic attacks and things like that. But you have been very open about your struggle with panic attacks. I'd love to hear a little bit about how they come on, what you do when they come on, because I think it's nice to hear from a man who deals with them and have been dealing with them what to do. Because I'm sure a lot of our listeners, I've had personal feedback. It's like, what do I do when I have a panic attack? What are things? So can you just talk a little bit about how you've navigated that as an adult?
Yeah. And, I was exposed to panic attacks all my life through my mom's agoraphobia. She would have them all the time whenever she would try to push herself outside of her comfort zone too much. And I could never relate to it growing up. I was like, Mom, this is in your head. This is a feeling that you're having. It's not, and I feel like I wasn't meeting her with empathy because I was just like frustrated. Like, you're so close to living the life that you want, but you are trapped by this anxiety, and it just made no sense to me. And then I had a painful awakening in my early 20s where I had my first panic attack. And God, I mean, the feeling of a panic attack, I feel like cannot be described nor understood unless you have had it yourself. It just feels like the entire world is like, I kind of get tunnel vision with like it's like tunnel vision. Like, this is my vision of what the world looks like, but all the anxiety and stress I've ever felt is right there on the edge, shrinking that hole of visibility. And it's just a feeling of, I'd say, similar to claustrophobia, or like a lot of other feelings that people feel when they feel trapped. And I struggled, and I would say suffered with that for 4 years straight, even trying to just push through it. And one day I was so tired of it. I was doing research. How do I get rid of this? How can I stop this? And I stumbled upon this interesting article. And at the time, mind you, there was very little, almost no one was talking about mental health. It was like this weird blog that I found. And someone kind of explained that when you have a panic attack, it's almost fear feeding on fear. So it's like when you start to have these feelings of anxiety, you start to fear what's next. And then that fear of what's next causes you to assume the worst. And then you start to feel the worst when you assume the worst. And it's this feeding, you start to feel, it just feeds on itself. And one thing that was mentioned was that it's kind of a fear of lack of control. So now whenever I get one, I'm able to just realize, oh, I'm fearing a lack of control. And I try to control my breathing. I try to become very present, think about the area that I'm in, the feelings that I'm feeling, whatever I'm touching, the air that I'm breathing. And being present in the moment makes me then not fear what's coming next. Because all I can do, all my brain power is being dedicated to this very moment when the fear of the unknown isn't occurring, because that's just my imagination going crazy. Yeah. So it's kind of just taking control of my imagination in that moment and just being present.
Yeah, I've heard it's like 5 things that you see, 5 things you hear, 5 things that you can smell, 5 things that you can touch. It's like demanding your body become present by acknowledging all of the things. And that I've heard that works very well. I recently learned in therapy, I'm doing a lot of really, really deep therapy and a lot of inner child work and stuff right now. And I recently learned that I had panic attacks growing up. I just didn't know they were panic attacks.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what they were. I remember a time where I was so disoriented that my dad had to put me in the bathtub. And I had no idea what was happening. I thought it was like hallucinating, and it was panic. And I had no clue that I was. And I also learned recently that I have anxiety. And I had no clue. I was like, I'm just a dude. I don't feel a lot of stress. And I was talking to my therapist about it. Yeah, I'm like, sometimes I kind of get short of breath and I can't take a full breath. And she's like, yeah, sweetie, that's anxiety. I'm like, it is?
Yeah. Well, it shows up so differently for men than women.
Yeah. And I had no idea, because I, for so long, haven't been allowing myself to feel all of the things that are underneath why I would even have it. So what do you want to, what would you say to men that are listening who maybe aren't where you are? You've done a shitload of work, man, who maybe haven't been to therapy yet, who like me don't even know that they had or have anxiety, who maybe they've had panic attacks, but they don't even know. But in general, what do you want to say to men who maybe are suffering with something that has to do with their mental health, but don't feel like they can reach out and ask for help?
I guess I would say the first thing is to acknowledge that you have them, and also not judge yourself for having them. The reasons that you feel these feelings are valid and have a source that caused them that may have been out of your control. And it's okay to feel these feelings. A lot of us have felt similar things, and a lot of us are dealing with it underneath it all right now as well.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Shall we jump into rapid fire questions?
Let's do it. Rapid fire.
Welcome to this week's Man Enough podcast, Rapid Fire Questions.
Anthony, when is the last time that you apologized?
God. I think I apologize a lot. I know you're gonna ask me to point out a specific moment, so I'm trying to think if I can even remember any specific moments. It's just become like so intrinsically connected with my lexicon that I just like, sorry. And it's just like everything. I probably apologize like 6 times today with people that helped me set up all these, everything on set today.
What was the hardest then? The hardest thing that you remember apologizing for?
Making someone in my life who is very important to me feel like my work was more important.
It's a fresh one.
Yeah.
When's the last time you cried?
Heavy cry, like 10 days ago. It was all those feelings of realizing, oh, the pandemic is not over. I might fall into this depression again. I might start to feel disconnected from everyone and reality. I might start maybe even dissociating, which sometimes I feel like I kind of like have moments of derealization where I feel like I'm just floating through the world. And I was in the middle of a very intense workout, and something about like that, it all came out at once. It was like that physical exertion made the emotional exhaustion come out through tears.
Sometimes it's buried so deep, especially for us men, that we have to do something physical to even realize that there's pain that's unaddressed.
Yeah.
We just spend our lives just stuffing it down. Down.
Well, normally we don't do this because you are the guest, but I'm just curious real quick. When's the last time you cried, Justin? He just shared his.
2 days ago.
What was it?
I was in therapy, and she asked me to feel into something, and I took a breath and I felt into it, which is what I'm learning and really working on, and just broke down. And while breaking down, I started crying because I was so proud of myself for being able to cry. because it's something that I'm personally working on, is like getting back in touch with with all of it in my body. And so I had both moments of like, oh shit, I have a lot of feelings here, and oh my God, I'm able to do this. I'm not a robot.
Yeah.
It was both of
You know what's weird is I haven't cried during therapy ever. And I don't know. It's like I get deep, but I just haven't. I don't know.
I'll text you my therapist's number.
My therapist just shows up on the screen, and she's like, "How are you?" And I'm like, I just start crying.
After a while,
on cue.
I can imagine.
When's the last time you cried?
Like, I'm actually shocked I didn't cry yesterday, but I'm trying to make sure that's true. I didn't cry yesterday. I didn't cry the day before. Wow, that's amazing. I cry like every 3 days, like on cue. There's really, I can't even
the cry cycle.
Yeah, I cried in therapy, like last time I had therapy. So
Jamie, when was the last time you cried?
Last night, my nephew, my dad has a new song that I recorded, just guitar and voice with him. And then my dad sent it to my nephew, Jared. And he took it and put some music to it. And it made me so proud of him. Oh. And I just was listening to it, crying because of how he showed up and how good he is. Oh. And so I called him and I cried to him. So.
See, if you're listening to this, this little moment here is important, and here's why. So often as human beings, especially as male human beings, we can withhold sharing the parts of ourselves that society would deem as weak. We withhold our vulnerability for fear of being judged. But the magic is that when you express vulnerability, you realize that you're not alone and that it's shared, and everybody has a similar experience, and it makes you more connected and closer to another human being. Thank you, Jamie, for doing that. All right. Final 2 questions here. This is not so rapid fire, but it's so worth it. I want you to go back to 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old Anthony. All right. Mom has her agoraphobia. You're being called gay in school. Maybe some bullying, policing. What do you want to tell little Anthony now?
I mean, I want to tell him that everything is going to be okay. That he doesn't need to feel like he is in control of everyone to make everyone else around you feel more comfortable. It was just a lot of that feeling like I needed to make sure everyone around me was comfortable, regardless of how I felt.
and now you have a time machine. You can go to the future, and you're able to watch. You're a guest at your own funeral. What do you hope is said about you? What do you hope is said about you in the way you moved through the world as a man?
I hope that people say that I was so confidently me that I wasn't afraid to find the strength in being vulnerable and make others feel more understood through my vulnerability.
And we have an audience question, rapid fire question from Jules of Life, 0. What mistake failure taught you the biggest lesson on your journey with defining your masculinity?
I love that.
I mean, I don't have a specific moment, but just doubting myself constantly, I feel like caused me to have lots of moments that I felt were failures. And looking back, I wish that I would have been maybe just more confident in my decisions, even if it meant experiencing those failures just as they were. I wish that I wasn't doubting myself through the entire process.
Sweet. Last question.
Sure.
What does it mean to be man enough?
I think it means to find strength in vulnerability.
Amen. We'll leave it at that.
Amen. That's right.
Well, Anthony, I got something to tell you. You, my
hear
friend,
it.
are man enough.
Thank you. I needed to hear that.
Thank you for joining us, brother. We so appreciate it. What an awesome conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you
you
so
guys.
much.
And
Thank you.
look forward to meeting you in person when it's safe again.
Let's do it.
All
I'm
right.
stoked. Yes,
All right,
it will
brother.
be safe again. I like that.
That's right.
Tons of love, and we will be right back with Liz Plank and Jamie Heath. This is Man Enough. Welcome back to the Man Enough podcast. I'm Justin Baldoni.
I'm Liz Plank. It's very far away. Commuted to my mic.
And I'm Jamie Heath. Hey, hey.
And thank you so much for sticking around. This was a really, sweet is the word. I don't know why I want to say sweet. It felt like a sweet conversation. He's a sweet man.
Yeah, yeah, and
Very
you,
gentle.
I felt like you shared a lot in this episode, Justin. A lot of things that I didn't know about you, like your panic attacks when you were growing up.
I'm just learning
and-
about them. So
Yeah.
for the audience, just so the audience knows, we actually haven't been together shooting these podcasts for 3 months?
Yeah.
And these last 3 months have been really intense for me. I've been doing a ton of therapy and really deep work.
Stop drinking coffee, too.
Yeah, I'm 3 months off caffeine.
So jealous. You have that willpower.
Come to the dark side.
But it worsens the anxiety. My therapist will constantly be like, "And how many coffees did you have?" And I was like, 8. I don't understand. Like, why am I stressed, right? Like, but it really does
part of it.
exacerbate it. Of course, of
Yeah.
course. And you said it. You know, it's really changed you as a person.
I feel like it has. My wife tells me it has.
Yeah.
I feel, it's weird to say, but I feel sober
Wow.
in that
Interesting.
way. It's almost like for me it was an addiction for sure. But yeah, so I just connected to a lot of what Anthony was saying. I felt like we had similar stories just in terms of the way we were treated by other boys, especially, and girls, even down to the nail thing, right? That idea of looking at our nails, and like you brought up the way we look at our feet,
Yeah.
and how we're constantly policed by other boys.
And that,
growing up.
and that the inherent idea in that is that being gay is bad. That being gay is an
And
insult.
being a girl.
Yeah, being a girl or
Being a
or
girl
being gay.
and being
right?
gay.
When there's nothing wrong with either of those things.
Having any trace of feminine quality, either physical or emotional, is something that you're pleased for, which is so heartbreaking to me. I'm writing the middle grade version of Man Enough right now for 9 to 12-year-old boys, and he made me think of myself at that age.
And that's why it's so important for straight men, you know, that so much of this work is to eradicate homophobia, right? That like it's not just about sexism, it's about, you know, freeing gay men and freeing queer men frees you as a straight man as well.
So what do we do? What do we do to counteract that, to challenge it? Because the things out in the world are not conducive to raising boys with a different perspective. What are we doing?
We got to teach our boys to not worry about being man enough, to worry about being human enough. And that all of the qualities in our chromosomes are human qualities. And we got to stop differentiating between the two. I had an idea. I was doing an interview, and I said, let's just Google all of the masculine and feminine qualities, because I was getting some pushback. You know, when your book came out, it was like endless press, and I was like, let's just Google the masculine and feminine qualities. And so give me 5 masculine qualities.
Courage,
Dominance.
strength,
Bravery.
power.
Boom.
Protection.
Okay, got it. If I wanted to create an army of robots, those are all of the qualities that I would imbue in the robot, right? If I was Elon Musk and that was my new thing, I want the robot to be all of those things. Now give me 5 feminine qualities.
Compassion,
Nurturing.
sensitivity.
It's funny, right? And then if you want to give the robot life, you give it the feminine qualities. It literally makes the thing alive. But we as boys aren't taught that. We're not taught that like the feminine qualities make us human. We're taught that they make us gay or girls, which inherently are bad.
I would like to say, I don't know if we're not taught that. I think we're not taught that by the world, right? So there are many of our parents and mothers who do teach us those qualities. I certainly was.
Yeah.
I see other boys and stuff, but we are then challenged with what the world expects of us, and then constantly being told that.
We're policed.
We're policed.
And the world creates value in masculine qualities and devalues feminine qualities. So even my own femininity and my nurturing and all those things are sort of devalued. And in order to gain power in the hierarchy, I have to act like a man, right? Like that we tell women, be more assertive, do right.
But what
that
happens when you do?
Oh, well, then also we're punished. And we're called, difficult and all the things. So you really can't win.
Either way, when you are a woman or gay.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Or, God forbid, trans or gender nonconforming.
I also loved that he shared about his mom. I certainly related to that, and just how that's affected him, and how then therefore he's possibly treated others in his life, how he feels responsible for caring for people, maybe because of his relationship with his mom.
He just seems like a guy who's done and is doing the work.
Yep.
And that's just awesome. And I love meeting folks like that in this industry. And I hope if you're listening to this, you took something from that or are inspired to do the work yourself if you're maybe haven't started yet, or to go deeper if you have started, because I can assure you, having written a book on this, the journey is just beginning for all of us. We're all works in progress.
And what's interesting too is that he's been successful. All that stuff that we try to go after and we think will define us and make us feel joy and all really successful, he's experienced. And yet, you hear what he's talking about and what he's challenged with. And those things are always there. We have to deal with it through therapy. We talked about that.
Yeah.
So having money, being successful does not fix really what it means to be human enough.
No. I wish we could change the name to Human Enough. But baby steps, guys. Baby steps. I'm just happy that if you're listening to this, you're still with us and you're in the room. If you like what you hear, Liz, where can they listen to us?
menanoff.com/podcasts or wherever they get their podcasts. Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Orange,
YouTube.
All of the places. YouTube. You
Wait,
can see our
Orange,
faces.
is that
watch
a
it
joke or is
there.
that a real thing?
What?
Orange is a real thing?
No, it's not. Oh my
Orange.
God, you guys thought it was real. That was
I don't know.
catch for Jamie. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
yeah.
But you can also watch this.
I was like, what is this new podcast network? Orange.
Orange. No,
Apple
it's
Orange.
not.
Instead of
Orange.
Apple can better. God, I'm gullible. We will see you next time.
We will.
I'm Justin Baldoni.
I'm Liz Plank.
I'm Jamie Heath.
And this is Man Enough.